Well, I'll start off by saying that I think it's important to have a dedicated employee or team. Most organizations that eventually have a diversity space would have been much better off if they had that diversity space, that employee, that resource, that team early on. It helps to mitigate issues that might happen down the line. As it relates to recruitment and retention, there's a greater chance that you're going to have a diverse workforce from day one instead of day 10,000. But for organizations that don't have dedicated employees, I think it's really important for leadership to buy in, right? So to hear from the CEO that this is important, and for the CEO and other leaders to say this is important. For employees who find this to be an important space, for them to be heard, for them to be a part of the conversation. So like employee resource groups is a great thing that a lot of organizations have that don't necessarily have a diversity lead. Right, so these are employees working in the organization who can serve as a diversity resource, even though that's not their full-time job. But in that particular case, there needs to be buy-in from managers and leadership that you can spend extra time during the week to do a recruitment event, to have a safe space conversation, et cetera. So once again, I think it's important to have the dedicated space, but if you don't, you have to have leadership from the top who talks about diversity, who supports diversity, whether it's the C-suite, managers, you name it. Without that, it's really tough to move the needle, so to speak, and to move the conversation. Every organization is different. That space could be talent partners making themselves kind of open and accessible to employees to discuss issues like this. That space could be physically, it could be the tool that the legal office might hold, like the tool where you can go and have the conversation, or the tool where you can go and report discrimination, as we talked about earlier. But ideally, it's a space that you curate. Right, so having fireside chats, right, making sure that those fireside chats bring diverse people into the organization. Having a Slack channel where people can come together and talk about issues, with employees who might be a part of the organization but across the world in a different office. So creating digital spaces, physical spaces, making sure that people whose job it is to listen to what employees have to say have that diversity lens in those conversations too. So when I say space, I mean everything.